everyone. Welcome back to Your Full Crew Halloween edition. I am Dawn Zoldai, one of your co-hosts.
And I'm Mike Peel, your other co-host. We've got some great articles today. We're going to be talking about long-range UTM, first case use that we're really excited about. We're going to be talking about how drones are going to be impacting climate change. We're going to be talking about basically self-driving cars hitting a wall. It's a kind of joke there. And then also Chipotle hiring an AI robot that is able to interact with humans. And I've got some great commentary, and so do our guests, about all these articles. And I could think of no better people than we have today to discuss these topics. We've got Eric Gauthier and Joan Michelson. Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Michael. I'm happy to be here. Sorry for my French accent, by the way, but I'm only French.
We love it.
And, yeah,
I'm
thank
part
you for
French,
that.
so no apologize to me.
Good. So, by the way, I will create in a company with drones 3 years ago, and now we are trying to see how is the business here in US. For example, I'm joining here, and we are passionate about giving the infrastructure, because we think that drones will fly thanks to very good infrastructure in the future. So this is where we are at now, and we have behind that some tests I've put on picture. I'm super happy to join because I was following these videos and e-casts from abroad. So great insight, great people, great talking, and we are the first one not to talk about Elon Musk today, I guess.
All right, very good. And the company is Vertipads, for those that don't know.
Okay. Exactly.
Well, it's nice to hear that we have some fans across the ocean, because we definitely do try to focus on international issues here related to tech, and especially international on Dawn of Drones. And we also have Joan Michelson. So Joan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Joan Michelson. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you all. I had the pleasure of meeting Dawn when I spoke at the Move Innovation and Transportation Conference recently. Yay, Dawn. Really fun. So I'm an ESG consultant, environment, social, and governance, if you know what that is, climate change, sustainability. And I am the host of the Electric Ladies podcast. I interview women who are rocking and rolling the energy, sustainability, and climate space. I've interviewed 370 plus women, so there's lots to choose from across the entire economy. And I also write for Forbes, including an article that dropped today on climate change and values we can talk about.
Very cool.
Well, we're going to actually be talking about some of your values and how they interact with the drone space. You supplied this awesome article for us. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I appreciate the Weather Channel doing this story, because the Weather Channel doesn't have an agenda. Drones are really helping address climate change in a number of ways. One is literally with weather, and that's why the Weather Channel aired it, I think, and wrote about it, monitoring weather patterns to help track climate change, but also on a practical business level. They're being used, and I'm sure people have seen stories about this before, to deliver what's called last mile delivery and reduce the number of vans and trucks doing that delivery, which theoretically reduces emissions. I say theoretically because most of those services, the data that a lot of companies use compares it to diesel or traditional gas-powered vehicles, but actually the truth is that a lot of these delivery services are using electric vehicles or hydrogen-powered vehicles now, so they're really not emitting any emissions anyway. But the drones are reducing that even further. They're a little freaky. People get a little freaked out, and like I'm in a condo complex. They can't really deliver here. I mean, you need some kind of a human to deliver it. I think it's really for houses, and they're testing it in California and a couple places that have been particularly friendly to that. But I also want to point out that drones are being used in climate change in other ways, including in a cool way of tracking wildfires. In fact, I was in Iceland recently, and there's a company that is using them to feel the heat from embers before they become a fire and then
Wow.
alerting the fire department, which is extraordinary. I mean, if only they had that in Paradise, California, right? And there's a company that's using drones to plant trees in areas that they can't access, to reforest areas that have been destroyed from deforestation and climate change and, forestry, et cetera, logging. And also, interestingly enough, to help get targeted relief to disaster areas. Like, imagine recently there was that bridge that was crushed in the hurricane in Florida, I believe it was, and that island was secluded, right? Drones, I mean, they rebuilt the bridge pretty quickly, but drones could get to those people and deliver supplies and, emergency supplies immediately. So this is all, and they're also using drones to track, like, where to put disaster relief. There's a cool site called Zooniverse where you can go on and you can compare pictures, and then the drone will pass that, the computer will pass that information to companies that use drones to help target the relief. So there's a whole lot of really interesting uses for drones when it comes to climate change, and only more are coming up. It's really a matter of creativity and innovation and how you think about it, right? It's like, what ideas can you come up with, and what applications can you come up with if you're coming at it from the standpoint of solving that challenge? And if you're coming at it from the standpoint of, we don't care where the ideas come from either, right? We don't care where the source of the ideas are. So drones are being used in a lot of interesting ways to address climate change.
Well, Joan, you are speaking our language here, because this is what me and my, drones have been our world for a while now, and clearly Eric's too. So Eric, I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
No, I kind of absolutely agree with that. They have a great solution for a lot of issues, but the principle is simple. Before you had a chopper, an helicopter to do anything, now you can have a drone for most of the applications. So drone against chopper, the equation is simply and fastly done. On the other side, I come from a long background in retail and delivery and trucking, and so I think I get the equation. So I don't agree that the drone is to be compared with an e-van, an electrical van, because, by the way, the equation of how material and energy you need to build a van compared to a drone, the van will last longer to the drones, but the drones are getting so much better that they will last long in the future. And then I see a lot of people talking about, yes, the last mile delivery, because I want my coffee now in my condo. I like that. But the real challenge is not there. The real challenge is, I'm living in a far remote community. I am too old. I don't have a car. It's difficult, and I get my pharmacy. I don't want to be dramatic, but this is this. The first time I came here to meet the North Dakota University, it was May, there was some flooding, and there was some people who was isolated just because of the seasonal flooding. The drone was a solution. So there is a lot of application like that, and yes, I agree. That will have an impact, but it have an impact even for, I think, the quality of the living of a lot of people around that, the quality of the service. You were talking about the wildfire, just a simple drone now for less than $2,000 with a thermal imagery can see where the fire is starting, and you can deploy it very fast. This is about controlling the airspace now, the low altitude paradigm. How do we provide a service for the airplane, the high altitude, the low altitude? When we have the low altitude control, we can understand what happened there, and then the drones can very deploy, because now the technology is there. Military-wise, we can fly drones for decades, very far away. The pilot is far away, and they are kind of efficient, even if it's not what we want to do, but it's at the point. Civilian drone will solve a lot of that. I'm sure of that. And then there's the one you say, the one who plant trees. There's another one which is interesting. Sorry for that. He poops little bomb that absorb the air and so switch off the fire.
Oh, wow.
And
I've seen those. I forget the name of the
amazing
company, Eric, but I've seen them at a couple conferences, and you're right, they look like they're like almost like paintballs if you've ever gone, you know, kind of
Exactly.
paintball, you know, like where they drop out of the drone and they help disperse the fire. So really kind of interesting things. I want to jump on a couple things both of you said. First of all, Joan, I believe Singapore has been integrating drones pretty well into apartment buildings. They've built kind of these drone ports on the roofs that like tenants have access to or something like this, right? They also, and there's, I think, Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like Valkyrie has created maybe a little drone kind of, let's just call it, I don't know, pad or something that can attach to a windowsill. But I remember seeing some company putting something like that out where it could be used in something like an apartment. So I could be talking about the wrong company. But speaking of companies, I want to give a shout out to Highlander and Kando. Their drone was featured in that article that Joan picked. And they are two Israeli companies doing amazing things with drone delivery and beyond visual line of sight. So like props to Highlander and Kando there. Love those guys. Yeah, but so many incredible applications. And, you know, the fact that, you know, honestly, Joan, I don't know, a lot of these companies are out there thinking, hey, we're here to make a difference societally for climate change. Like, honestly, I feel like it's just a very awesome byproduct of what people are trying to do. Like, I don't know that it's like the problem that they were trying to solve, but it's clearly something that is happening as a result of drones, reducing emissions by what were some of the numbers here? 84% less than some of the diesel trucks you talked about, 94% less energy. And I know, Eric, it's probably an apples to orange comparison, as you kind of noted, but lots of things going on. What's kind of sad that we saw in the article was all the limiting factors, you know, that were noted, which I think Mike and I are certainly aware of, you know, regulatory issues, limited payload, battery capacity, infrastructure, which is what Eric has helped trying to solve, and why Vertipads is here in America, working in North Dakota. That's where I met him, by the way, at the UAS Expo and Summit just recently after I met Joan. So getting out there on the road pays off, get to meet really cool people. But Mike, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think Eric had an interesting point about possible future efficiencies, right? So it's one thing to say that we're currently limited in terms of what we could do, you know, on X battery life, but battery as a technology is still getting better, right?
Yeah.
And we're also, you know, finding alternative battery sources, and I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to actually find even more, because we're not sure if we have enough quantity of the current to support what would be the scaling of electric vehicles in terms of usage. But just even having an alternative, if we are automating all delivery systems or even tracking delivery systems more efficiently, like we've been doing with UPS and FedEx for years now, that having the ability to choose the route based on what is not only economically efficient but environmentally efficient, there could be some regulatory pressure that forces you to decide to use a drone if it is the more environmentally safe option. And you know, I see just having the alternative is, I think, important if we're going to combat climate change with these tools.
Yeah, the article, and Eric's got another comment. The article mentioned Amazon Prime Air firing back up. We all know that seemed to have kind of shut down a little ways ago, but for those of us that went to the Commercial UAV Expo in Vegas, which was in September, we got to see their drone. Like, they had it on the floor and everybody was like, oh my gosh, Amazon's drone is here. Like, nobody had really seen it. Nobody had heard much for a long time, but it looks like they're going to be launching in Lockford, California from a warehouse and delivering maybe within a 15-mile radius. Eric, back over to you.
Oh yeah, just to come back on that, it's everybody's waiting the low altitude regulation. Because
Yeah.
technologically we are ready. I think it's what they are doing. Now, I was looking at Michael comments. There is the electricity, but yeah, there's not only the electricity, there's the hydrogen.
Yep.
Oh yes, yeah, sure.
And I come back, sorry to come back to my my own church, but it's all about infrastructure. Now you come back and forth, but when the infrastructure is ready, when you have your service station for drone, you can fly multiple array and multiple missions. And then the comeback of the byproduct, I'm sure that between a drone in 20 minutes and a car in 1 hour, we choose the drone, especially because it's less expensive. So I think there is just a byproduct implication, but the efficiency is there. Cannot fly yet, but he will do. He will do.
Yep. Absolutely.
Joan, you had an extra comment?
Yeah, I've a lot of things going through my head. First of all, I actually lived in North Dakota for 2.5 years. So yeah, Eric and I connected about this online, so we can talk about that sometime. Yes, I'm probably the only born and bred New York City girl who actually lived in North Dakota for 2.5 years. But anyway, it actually got me into the green economy, so it was really a great experience, except I couldn't bear the super wet, the bad weather. But you know, the issue with batteries with drones is the same one with electric vehicles. I'm glad you mentioned electric vehicles. It's the environmental impact of manufacturing of the minerals that go into them, of the manufacturing process, and the full life cycle. If we can develop batteries that address those issues for electric vehicles and drones, and then use the same batteries for both purposes. And you know, it's hard because just like all automakers don't want to use all the same battery, you know, they're all going to have different designs. I mean, this was the problem with Better Place. Better Place was a business that collapsed years ago that was trying to swap out batteries in all cars, and it just didn't work because automakers are not going to do that, right? But if there's a way to have some consistency where they can be used and disposed of or recycled, or you know, use the amount of, because there's a lot of there are electrons still in the batteries even when they theoretically get to end of life in the vehicle, that maybe those, and they're probably true for drones too, but they can be used for other things. So if there's a way to use the same battery technology for both electric vehicles and drones, that would be good for both industries. It would address some of the infrastructure issues as well. And I think there's actually funding in the infrastructure bill and in the Inflation Reduction Act that will support that, in the Chips and Jobs Act actually also. So if we can do them together, that would be good for the environment, good for business, and good for society.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know we got to go to the next article, but Joan, as I was walking around that Move America conference, the whole time I was thinking, these people need to be talking to the drone people, including, by the way, some guy whose company recycles batteries. And I went up to him and I'm like, hey, do you recycle drone batteries? He's like, huh. You know, I was just, so, I mean, just so many connections. I think getting these communities to talk to each other will be key. I'd love to work with you on that. But let's maybe go to the next article.
Yeah, so we've got Eric's article, and this is about a long distance drone flight that is, I think, groundbreaking. So tell us about it.
Yeah, I like, it's more than an article, is a news, but I like this one because of the implication behind. What those guys have done, they have flown a drone remotely through the 4G and 5G network.
Yep.
So now what happened there? We don't like, as an industry or the regulator, the 4G, 5G network, because it's maybe not safe enough and subject to a lot of disruption, and maybe there's a lot of maybe, but it can work. It can be a second system to recoup any command and control out of that. But what they have done, and there is a little exercise for geography here. They flew a drone in Spain, so you have to know where is Spain on the map. And they have to fly, the pilot was in Spain, and the guy were flying in Latvia. How is Latvia? You have to cross the entire Europe, 3,400 kilometers, 2,000 miles. Two countries which have a 5G and 4G network, heavily investing on things, which is at the border with Russia. That's not innocent, by the way. And they make a fluid perfectly, smoothly for a lot of kilometers with drones. So they make it possible. They just show that it was possible. We knew it was possible. They just show it. They have to map the system to have to sure that there is enough control, but there is a lot of latency, and they was able to recoup the latency, meaning the difference between the moment you give your control and the moment you get the drone repaired and accepted the control on that. So what I like about this example is that we have infrastructure already in place that can do something. Maybe the FAA or the other regulator would like to have something, but at least it's a good one to stabilize. We don't have to invent the wheel. We can reuse actual control. Why we come here from France to try to get in touch and make this business trip to see how this works here, because here is an excellent ecosystem, which is one of the test sites out of America, which is the principle is they reuse, this is Ventis, they reuse actual infrastructure, and throughout of this actual infrastructure, they have to do the low altitude control. So we don't have to rebuild as new. It's coming back a little bit to the article from Joan. Why spending money and bringing new things that are expensive when you can already improve what you have from what you have and make it happening? And I like what about this article is that using actual systems, you can already give a layer. That's not maybe the perfect layer. You will have to complement it with other systems, but you have a good layer to make operations happening. And this is a very inexpensive layer. So inexpensive layers means inexpensive operations, means very productive and very competitive things. So it will be affordable for people. This is really what I like about this article. And when it comes to infrastructures, it's the same thing for drones, because this is the 4G or the antenna infrastructure, but we don't have to invent new Vertipads or Vertipods. We can reuse buildings. So your example down about Singapore is about that. You don't have to rebuild the building. You just put the structure on top of it. The one behind me is one of those things we are creating here. It's something that you use actual buildings, and then with that, you can put antennas on it. And so you improve the coverage and the low altitude gets ready. So it's really what I like about what those guys have done. And if you are not used to Europe's complication about politics and standards and things, they flow the command and control through Spain, France, Germany, some Benelux, then some Poland, then maybe some other things that they finally arrived there.
Wow.
So that was a good thing. That was a good thing. I think it's a good eyes opening on that and the potential, and to be more courageous to say, okay, let's use what is already existing, and then we pinpoint it to make more security or safety.
I love that. Joan, what do you think?
Well, of course, the first question that comes to mind when you mention the trajectory, Eric, of the story in that article is, have they run into, what's happening with their business with the war in Ukraine? Are they able to do this? Are they running it? I mean, they're on the border with Russia. They're in Latvia. I mean, my full disclosure, my paternal grandparents were from Latvia and Lithuania. My maternal grandparents were from Ukraine. So it's especially top of mind for me. But when you talk about them trying to do that path, what's the impact of the war on their?
They don't mention that in the article, and by the way, they are far away from that war, so it's like business as usual there. There's just pressure, obviously military pressure, I guess, around it. But the good thing is that we know that the region can be under some scrutiny and difficulty and disruption for communication, and they were able to do that. So it means that they achieve great technically. So it means it's possible. It's possible. But it's far away from
so their access to the satellites and the technology you talked about latency. Is latency affected by any of the issues related to the war? Because it's in the same neighborhood.
It may have, but it looks like not. That is the good news. And there is I met some time ago a company which is able to go within the way you have transmission through the LTEs, and so they can find a broadband which is faster and not being compromised by anything. It's just pure electronic engineering around that, and I think this is one of the solutions. There is always a band within the band which is protected. If this one is done for maybe operation like that one, that would be perfect. This is just a demo we have done, but when I'm thinking about massive disruptions, and you have the firefighters or the first responders need to get somewhere, and there is no antenna because I don't know, you have a hurricane, all the antennas are down, but the 4G is still existing. They can fly their drone there and see the things. That is what I like about this one. We can have already existing things.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, to your point, Eric, and both, you know, it's kind of to Joan too. You know, the point is it's one system of many, and I think for, you know, any one of these industries, whether we're talking electric vehicles, whether we're talking drone delivery, whether we're talking, you know, really anything, it's going to be connected, it's going to be multimodal, and there's going to have to be systems of systems. And so to be able to use 5G as one option, but be able to maybe sniff out another connection, as Eric alluded to, if for some reason 5G is not going to work well, there's a company, for example, called Elsight. That's what they do. They're also out of Israel, where they have this Halo solution that sniffs out the best connection. The company here, by the way, was Airborne RF. Thomas Neubauer is the CEO there, also of Demeter. I saw Thomas in human form in Las Vegas in September. It was so cool. But I've written about Airborne RF solution that they used here in Drone Life, by the way. So that article is out there. It was called Network Solutions Enabling Complex Drone Operations in Europe. And so they've been working with USpace, which is the UTM, right? The UAS traffic management system regulation and the Gulf of Finland trials and whatnot. This one is really huge. I would agree with Eric. The distance that this one over, the fact that through Airborne RF, they're able to kind of monitor how is that connection going. So that's kind of the point of this software. And they're like this interesting linkage between the telecom communications, the drone providers, and aviation systems. That's what this Airborne RF does. It's like this linkage software. And so really, really cool that they were able to do this. I love what Europe has been doing, Eric. I've been a huge fan. I've been saying for years that Europe is ahead of us in so many respects when it comes to really effectuating drone operations on a repeatable, scalable way. So Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, let's bring it to the United States for a second then. One of the things that's been, I guess, annoying for people in the drone industry is kind of the chicken and egg situation that we get talking about these things with the FAA. They almost want the proof before they'll even allow you to fly, so you have to go through this, you know, certificate process to actually be able to do the test flight. It's cumbersome. It's almost purposely delayed. And you know, one thing that makes me happy when I see this happen in other regions of the world, it's usually we're talking about happening in one other country. Is that the excuses kind of get thrown to the wayside. It's like, no, it's working here. It's worked for X amount of flights, X amount of miles. So now you have to take a look at it. This is really groundbreaking because this is something across countries in the Eurozone. So that's an even bigger deal in my book.
It's huge.
It's unignorable at that point. You can't say, oh, well, you know, in Spain, they just have laws and regulations and airspace that's not crowded and so on and so forth. So that's why, you know, they were able to do it. It's a one-off. In this case, no. If they're able to run this flight multiple times from here, that means that it will be safe enough, most likely, for the most crowded airspace in the world, which I believe is the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I may, I think there's two approaches because now I'm experiencing the equivalent of the FAA in Europe, EASA, and the French ones, and now here, so I'm looking at the two things. They have two different approaches, but what I see might be that somehow here the testing is a little bit redundant somehow, and I don't want to offend, but then all the system is done, and then it flows very rapidly on the deck. On the other side, this is more brick and pieces that have been aligned, and when they are all aligned, they finally get to one. So I think it's a difference in approach. But yes, it's frustrating somehow because we are all believer in this industry to what we can do. So we want to fly.
Yeah, I understand. But to your point, that is an accurate description. Having worked with people at the FAA, they've talked at my shows, having met the people that were, help designing the safety protocols for UTM, and people at the test sites. The biggest thing has been like trying to bite off too much all at once, and then all these test sites are running their little kind of experiments, and they kind of die with the researcher, right? If the researcher doesn't get funding, or you're asking these companies to put up a lot of money to do it at your test site for a maybe, right? You can't even guarantee if it works there that it's going to make it into some regulation that allows them to fly later, which is why most companies have gone offshore somewhere to do these tests or
Yeah,
begin
I'd
their
love to hear.
operations.
I know Joan had her hand raised, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a few things on this. First of all, I like regulation to a degree. I mean, I think keeping us safe is a good thing.
Oh, of
Of
course. We love it, actually. We like we like clear
so,
Safety
regulation.
first.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm in DC, and so we have protected airspace. So every
yeah.
time there's a, aircraft that goes over, I know it's either the White House or the military. I'd like to keep it that way. Thank you very much. Then that is one of the things that has to be addressed in today's unfortunate society, is that these drones don't get into the wrong hands and start dropping nasty stuff on good people. The international law thing is really interesting. Actually, former Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Anthony Kennedy, was very big on applying international law to American issues, and it's a fair thing. By the way, the EU has also been very high on the environmental piece. I mean, the EU taxonomy is quite rigid, although I won't digress into a conversation about whether nuclear and natural gas belong on there as a renewable fuel, but we can all disagree. But the other thing is, these have to be innovation. How can I say this? Innovation requires this trial and error process. And what I have found in a lot of the grants and funding opportunities, both commercial contracts and grants, is that they actually want you to have multiple uses. They like it when you say, oh, it has 80 million uses, but then, to Michael's point, when you go in and you do that, they're like, oh, well, you're off focus and you need to do here and it's like, choose, right? You asked us to have these multiple purposes, so we have to figure out a way to deal with that, because every time you apply for one of these contracts, they want to think that the money that they're giving is going to go to multiple purposes, but then they kind of get annoyed when you're doing multiple purposes. So there has to be a way to manage that, because the innovation process is trial and error. I mean, PayPal started as something completely, just the payment system for some completely different business that nobody ever knows about anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
And YouTube was a dating site. YouTube was
a dating site? I didn't know that.
Yeah, the whole idea was you would make a video about yourself, you'd post it, and then people would comment and you'd make a date. So, but then
only Mike would know these things. Only Mike would know. Hey, Mike, we gotta thank our sponsors super quick, and then roll to the next article, which is about electric vehicles.
So I just want to say thank you to our sponsors, Promo Drone, Dragonfly, L-Site, and A King Gump. They've been supporting the show for weeks and months, and thank you to them, because they allow us to continue and bring on great people like our guest today. So kind of taking a little bit of a negative turn, pun intended here. Ford abandoned self-driving road to nowhere. And this is not the first article I've seen like this. There was another one in Bloomberg a couple weeks ago talking about over $100 billion wasted in self-driving car tech. I would not use the word wasted, but I would say there was a little bit overzealousness in terms of where we were on the perception side of AI technology as we were deploying these cars to the road and kind of selling companies into the idea that this was going to be replacing, you know, good old human drivers sooner rather than later. So it it's pretty clear if you've actually interacted with this technology that it will eventually, but I think there was a big leap during the supervised learning phase of um, teaching these vehicles that we assumed that they would actually be able to handle what is called an unprotected left turn, or to you and I, just a left turn. Um, and they still haven't been able to do that at any reasonable scale in safe environments, and unless the weather is extremely clear. So we have Ford here questioning what was actually a big public statement that they were going to be essentially a taxi company in 30 years. And it doesn't look like they're thinking that about themselves anymore. So I wanted to bring this up because I clearly still have faith in automated systems. I actually have faith in self-driving technologies in general. I think that they've actually made a lot of leaps even in the last year. But what have we gotten wrong, and what is going to take some time to actually work out before you see these things deployed at any reasonable scale? So I'm going to offer that up to
Yeah,
everybody.
I want to get Joan on this one first, but before we do, I want to give some fun facts from this article. Okay, first of all, it
Okay.
was Ford and Volkswagen both. They sunk about 3.6 billion into this company called Argo AI, and essentially had like controlling shares, which was how they were able to then jointly shut this business down. About 1,800 employees now looking for work, possibly going to be working at Ford, maybe doing more, let's call it automated driving systems type work instead of fully autonomous vehicles. And, a really different mindset the article brings up between, kind of Ford and Volkswagen just kind of hanging it up, and, contrast that with GM, which has the subsidiary Cruise, and Google, which has Waymo, where they're in for the, no pun intended again, Mike, long haul for this, right? So Cruise has the driverless taxi service in San Francisco. Again, lots of limiting factors with that. They're burning money like no tomorrow, 1.4 billion just in the first 9 months of 2022. And Volkswagen is out there, doing. I think Waymo. Waymo is in Phoenix, Arizona, if I recall correctly. So that's kind of the two mindsets. Like, all right, this is taking too long. We're calling it a day, and then the other people like, nope, this is going to happen. We're staying the course. So, Joan, over to you.
So a few things. I think part of this is I just interviewed Dawn saw me interview the chief engineer of Ford
Yes.
at the MOVE conference in the opening keynote, which was extraordinary conversation. And there, I also interviewed Susie Deering, who's their new chief marketing officer. And Susie's been there a year, and you can listen to that on Electric Ladies podcast, just to put it on, since I have the floor. I would pose it a few things. One is, I think that this is Susie's way of saying, let's focus on the truck market. They are very, the F-150 is the most popular truck in the world it has been for 45 years. And turning it into an EV was a ginormous bleeping risk. And what's interesting is it's expanded their market, not shrunk it. They now have, they told me 72 or 76% of the buyers of the F-150 Lightning, which is the electric version, are new to Ford and new to electric vehicles, and many of them are new to trucks. So I think part of this, the strategy behind this decision to reduce the investment in the autonomous vehicles on the part of Ford is focus. Is that they want to focus on their core market, on the trucks, and doing what they do well, and pivoting in that regard rather than and the other thing is, there's a whole safety factor there. Obviously, they've seen what's happened with Tesla and the crashes with autonomous vehicles.
Using
and
kids as test dummies.
Using
Okay, well,
yeah, I mean,
that's
it's
a whole
really
different
Well, that's
issue.
not Tesla's fault.
No, but
That's
it's no, but
the
it's
user.
scary. It's scary stuff. But the other thing I want to say, kind of on the other side, frankly, is don't forget that electric vehicles started as one of these businesses that was discarded because it was like, who's going to want it 25, 30 years ago by General Motors. I mean, my first CEO, I got into the green economy when I headed communications and co-headed sales and marketing for Chrysler's Global Electric Motor Cars. And my first CEO at Global Electric Motor Cars was one of the original engineers on the General Motors EV1. And Susie told me, or maybe it was Linda Zhang told me, that a lot of the engineers, some of the engineers from the EV1 are still working on electric vehicles today. And so, you gotta, this is innovation. This is what happens is, you make an investment, you've got to decide as a business leader where you're gonna focus, when you're gonna cut your losses. But I do think, frankly, I have a love-hate relationship with even the idea of autonomous vehicles. On one hand, I love to have I love driving, but I also love when I have something else to do and I get somebody to get me there. But the thought of turning it over, and we didn't talk about this before, but I was going to bring it up, and the whole cybersecurity issue of the cars being able to be hacked. I mean, Leslie Stahl did a story in 60 Minutes about autonomous vehicles, how easy they were to hack into. So there are so many issues, but you do have to have, I would guess that they have some pocket of money still in this space. They're just not putting as big an investment into it as they did before.
Well, Eric, you've got that background in you said vehicles and logistics. So what's your thinking?
I think we don't talk about the same thing we talk about autonomous. Whereas people thinking autonomous is, no more human. The trucks will drive by himself, the car will drive by himself. And I think the technology, the AI, not right there. The complexity of doing decision, maybe wrong decision, but decision about when you drive because it's dusk, you have a deer in front of you, or just because a kid's crossing the road and you don't. It's difficult. But when you go back to the assisted vehicle, it started a long time ago. You have the power steering wheel. You had, sorry for that, it looks like a dinosaur age, but it's very important because we are sitting in this vehicle now and they help us every single day. It's much more
we don't even realize it, right? Same with commercial airplanes. Those pilots, they're not like, most of that is just,
they're doing takeoff and landing mostly.
Yeah, but I'm just going to interject that there was a recent airplane catastrophe where, because the pilot could land with visual and didn't rely on the autonomous system, everybody was safe. So you got to have both.
Yeah, you can have both, but it's still the safest industry in the world for traveling, by the way. So coming back to the cars, you get the assistant, then you had the ABS and the ESP that is taking better your trajectory now, and then you have the cruise control, and now you have the one who limited your space, who help you for the lanes, who switch off the light and off the light one thing. So we are getting ahead. So I guess that maybe for car industry are working on thin margin, by the way. So billions and billions in something that will not bring back the payback, maybe is not wise now, but they are getting ahead. There's so much progress around that. And maybe we are just looking for the next level of automation, because when it's easy, and it's not always, but you are on a straight motorway, low traffic, good light, maybe your car say, I can drive for you. When you are in downtown, a lot of traffic, bad visibility, you say, no, I have no capability, you have to handle the drive. But we are getting next, and I think it's good for safety, it's good for economy. Not sure, we can have a lot of autonomous things now. You just go to a 4.0 factory, you will see how much autonomous vehicle you have inside that. See next
that is I was going to say, Eric, go ahead, Joan.
I just want to make one point about what Eric said, kind of that takes it to another little place, which is one of the things that they both told me, and all the people that I've interviewed in the auto sector, and there's been many, is that's also affecting who they hire. They are now hiring more data scientists and AI people and engineers of that kind than they are let's call them traditional engineers or traditional automaker assembly plant people, right? Because those are robotic. You know, a lot of the assembly plants are now using robots and other systems, but it's changing who they hire and how they hire.
Of course. I mean, it's the workforce of tomorrow starting today. I mean, that's something we talk about all the time. What's that going to look like? But what both of you said is a terrific segue to our final article here, which actually talks about bringing AI and robots into Chipotle. So really, really interesting stuff happening here. We talk about this in so many different contexts, like, are the robots taking over? Are people going to lose jobs? You know, when I read this article and you know, about how, and I'm going to talk about the AI systems and their robots that they're employing now. You know, a phrase jumped to my mind that the military is using. It's called human machine teaming. And that's really what this is all about. It's not about replacing people, just like in the drone world, just like electric vehicles. It's not to replace the driver. It's not to replace, you know, all these other employees. It's to take away the dull, dirty, dangerous jobs. And so anyway, what they're doing here at Chipotle, a couple things. First of all, they have an AI kitchen management system. And what that's doing, it's helping the cooks figure out what ingredients they need, like ordering them in advance, helping them, you know, kind of prepare the meals, like just kind of getting that mindset. Then they have this contextual experience program that interfaces with consumers. So it's like an app, right, that you can engage with Chipotle. Is your order ready? Are you at the wrong location? Hey, here's our QR code, things like this. So that this is all kind of in beta a little bit. The AIML, they're calling it Kitchen Management System, is being deployed in 8 restaurants in Orange County, California. The contextual experience program for customers is being used in the Cleveland area right now. But the one that really got me, I just love the name. It's Chippy the chip maker. It's a little robot that makes tortillas. It fries them, it salts them, and you know that frees up. I guess what was happening, you know, the workers manually were having to chop up the tortillas every morning. That took a really long time. Then they'd have to fry it, and it was like super messy, greasy, right, job. Nobody likes to be the chip maker, but now we've got Chippy. And oh, by the way, the same company, which is called Miso Robotics, also makes a robot called Flippy that flips burgers and does all kinds of stuff. They're using them at Whataburger, and Sippy. So notice the theme here. I'm loving Miso Robotics. I love the names. I love that they're taking away dull, dirty, dangerous jobs from humans and then making people maybe want to work more at Chipotle instead of, you know, being the chip guy or the chip gal. So anyway, I'd love to hear thoughts. Let's go to Eric first.
Oh, so we had a little talk about that because it's at my time in Shanghai, there was one who doing the bartender. It make your own barista and things like that. So I think the technology is there. It's as long as it remove things from human, which is difficult, is great, really great. I think we'll have more and more of that in the future. On the other side, I hope we will not end up with a fully robotic kitchen. I don't think I will go any longer as by the robot.
Well, especially someone from France. You know, you're famous for your food. I can't imagine, you know, replacing the stereotypical French chef, if you will, with a robot.
We can have a robot with an accent, if you wish.
Right,
That's
get David eyes and an accent, and then we'll buy into it.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's a great one, and they make more and more technology around that. What surprised me is that those things are already robotic in most of the process industry, the processed food. And so now they are able to miniaturize that with the robots and bring them in a kitchen of a single restaurant at an affordable cost.
Well,
And
no, continue. Finish your sentence.
So I think this is where is the revolution today, because we have those whatever mid-industrialists since time, but now they're able to miniaturize that, bringing nearby your door, which is the next revolution of that. And I think it's great because we might have much more affordable application in daily life for anything is dangerous or repetitive. with nearby your door, not going back to the process. So maybe you can tailor-made it, because I understand in your article that they can even choose how they make it, so it's always fresh and always good. That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah, so
That is.
I just got back from ROSCON, which was a robotics convention in Kyoto, and Intel was showing off a robot that could handle human to robot collaboration in real time, so that if you moved your hand, it would move it out of the way to make sure that it would not cause you harm. And that's actually the thing that I was interested in about in this article. So like you said, food processing and even entire restaurants have been roboticized, but it's more, even from a company level, or even the robot that you're purchasing having perception um, to the level that it can interact with human staff during a transition of basically automating that environment, because that allows for actually to keep the chef on staff, but to basically get a sous chef for free, right? So you can, at varying degrees, depending on what your service is, if you're just trying to make a meal that is the same thing every day over and over and over again, yeah, we could probably program a robot line of robots actually to produce that. And I went to one of those restaurants in Japan that makes the world's worst Italian pasta. Or you can basically, take out the drudgery and then just have a tastemaker focusing on preparation or picking the right materials for the day, and having their robot ballet basically support them. So I think that's kind of the revolution that's really interesting here. What about you,
Yeah, I
Joan? What do
think,
you think?
yeah, one of the things that comes to mind is labor management and workplace, how much you like your job. I mean, because a lot of these, to Dawn's point, a lot of these people, were doing jobs that were miserable. And if it can replace the miserable part so people can be more fulfilled in their jobs, we're living in an era. I mean, this is what the pandemic really brought to life, and people want to work in ways that are aligned with their values, and for companies that are aligned with their values. And though a lot of people may eat at Chipotle, they might not want to work there, right? So there've been a lot of controversies around Chipotle and that contamination years ago now, I guess it was. So if these robots can make going to work better and give people jobs that they enjoy more, and those people can get paid more, that's also a good thing. I'd also be curious, at the risk of being incredibly consistent, to see how the robots affect the environmental footprint. Chipotle has committed to reducing their emissions by 50% by 2030. And they're doing that, they say, in a number of ways, including, by the way, a farmers coalition of young farmers, of young people in doing farming, which is pretty cool. So if they can, I mean, robots can be great in farming. I've seen stories about robots picking strawberries and other kinds of berries and apples and things, and how they go about doing it, and how they are trained to know which ones to pick. So if the robots can be used to do tasks that humans would rather not do, and that both keep people safe and give people the opportunity to do jobs that are more fulfilling and that pay more, that's a good thing. And it also helps the company keep the employee for longer. And if it can reduce their carbon footprint, that would be cool too.
Yeah, totally agree on all points there. And, growing up, I worked a lot of different jobs, like in high school. And, as you were talking about some of these jobs that people don't want to do, I think about, if I worked in Chipotle, what's the job I wouldn't want to do? Like taking out the trash, probably doing those bathroom runs where you have to clean the bathroom, or, so there's absolutely things that people that work in, whether it's a regular restaurant or these fast food places, that it's just not super fun. We talk about this all the time, and I think, we also talk quite a bit about America has become more of like kind of a service industry, focus. I think that human interaction, customer service is really key. So like I wouldn't want a robot taking my order. I wouldn't even want a robot, on the other end of the phone. I mean, how many times have you tried to make a medical appointment, as an example? Because I think the medical community is one of the biggest users of these kind of robo trees, where it's like takes you 15 minutes and maybe eventually gets to
I
talk to a
know, I
human.
hate that.
I hate it
And
too. And
it's so
so
senseless. That a
it's
person would
Well,
get
and
you
it
to the answer.
it reflects
It's
poorly
a
on the provider. Anyway.
it
yeah.
does. And that's where I think that human to human contact, whether in person at the counter or, over the phone or whatever that is, I still think that's like the key thing that will help businesses. But people have to be good at that. Not everybody's good at interacting with other humans, honestly. So Mike, you had a thought there.
Yeah, well, because I just came back from Japan, as you know, and they have convenience or vending machines basically every 10 feet. And they also have systems when you go into restaurants, you hit a button, and they've had them for years for ramen. And then you sit down, and there is service, but the service starts where you need it, right? So the selection of something that just goes into a ticketing system that makes it to the chef, no, that's already handled. But hey, oh, this is a little hot. Can I get something to drink? That's when you want to talk to a person, right? You wouldn't want the faucet. It wouldn't be the same experience. So and given the options, um, that's actually even during the pandemic, this country was very conservative about how it dealt with it. Uh, People still wanted to actually meet with people at the end of the day. Now that things have opened up, the vending machines are still there and they're wonderful, but it hasn't stopped people from going to the stores, even when they have the option right next to it. So I think that's kind of interesting that we do have a preference to this operating system that has basically evolved over millions of years. Uh, Whereas whatever UI we come up with for these things, it we really have to test it out before it really replaces a human.
A couple things on that. One is I think that the isolation that COVID brought really made people appreciate other people. I mean, I've had people, in fact, people came up to me at Moved On and other conferences I've been at and say, it's nice to be around people again. I'm getting used to peopling.
Oh yeah,
But I
I
think that people really miss that human interaction. And so I think there's a point where you can go too far. But the other thing I'll say, and this is just hilarious, anybody who knows me will of course say I'm going to say this, is what if you want to make changes to the item on the menu that you want to order? I mean, like I don't eat meat, and a lot of places put meat in something, and I don't like, can you make it without bacon? Can you make it without, this? Can you make it without, how do you do that? I find that when I'm limited to a keypad, can't get the substitutions and or elimination. I can't make it what I want.
yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
think
that
oh, good, Mike. I was gonna say I think DoorDash has done a pretty good job of that because I've ordered and it's pretty specific. Like, okay, what kind of roll do you want? Do you want, lettuce, tomato, may like I guess it depends on the company, the store, but
Okay, I've
like
never used DoorDash, so
they're pretty good. They're pretty good at that. I don't know, Mike. Go ahead.
yeah, no. So there's two ways, and then we'll wrap up on this because we already drifted a little bit. But there's two ways that'll evolve. Basically, you have a programmer that's handling decision trees and conditionals, and that takes users and a lot of time and a lot of money. And then the opposite side of that, where most of the progress is actually happening, is speech to text to then AI interpretation. So that's basically two AI algorithms stacked on top of each other. And that's where you can actually get pretty close to, hey, can you just put a dash of this on the side or keep this over there? They could even put nice smiley faces on whatever interface and we'll be tricked into thinking it's just as good. But no, I think that even when you have that, it takes time to replace the operating system we're used to, which is eye to eye contact. Even this call fails on that, right? That's why we appreciate meeting each other at conferences, and that's how we end up on calls like this together after we meet. So
Yeah, but
I,
it's really efficient, but everything, I mean, to your point, and I think this is kind of the summary of what you guys do that is so beautiful is it's a combination of using what's best to achieve what purpose and then building upon that, it's fun, most people meet online and then they meet in person. Dawn and I met in person and now we're meeting online.
Same with Eric,
it's the complementarity of using, and Eric was talking about this before, is you use whatever combination of technology and humans works to achieve what you want to achieve.
I totally agree. That's why we do this show the way we do it, because we feel this is the best way to bring those conversations that we have in the halls at conferences to a larger group of people. And I haven't found a better way yet. And when I do, I'll do that. So thank you to our guests, Eric and Joan, for joining us today. Thank you to our audience for chiming in. I want to say hi to Brett Fedderson, who said great conversation. Thank you. And also thank you to our sponsors for supporting the show. Remember to subscribe, hit the like button, and the notification bell. We are growing rapidly, and it's all thanks to you. Appreciate you out there in TV land. Dawn, we have some great stuff coming up. You want to tell the audience about it?
Oh boy, yeah. So tomorrow, our Full Tilt Leadership Podcast, we've got Andreas Ployer from Drone Rescue Systems. He's out of Austria, so check it out. It should be amazing. Wednesday, we've got Chris Crignati, the president for Mission Go, doing amazing healthcare delivery with drones and all kinds of things. And then on Thursday, on our Clubhouse drop-in audio chat, we have Zohar Zalkami. He is with Defense Solutions, part 3 of 3 of our Counter UAS series with Defense. So, Mike, I'll stop talking and let you roll the final clips here.
All right, we are out here.